Okay, after 71,000 miles on my Suzuki V-Strom, let's go inside the engine and see how well this thing is holding up. Welcome to Urban Monk TV. Okay, so as those of you that follow my channel know, I'm prepping my V-Strom for a long coast-to-coast Trans-America motorcycle adventure trip that I'm calling Palms, Pines, and Fishing Lines. Follow here on Urban Monk TV for that. There's going to be a series coming out when I return from that trip. That trip is going to begin here in just a couple of weeks. I'm also going to be providing updates along the way on Instagram at Urban Monk TV. I've done videos in the past on the internal condition of this engine and talked about how well the bike is holding up for me. I did a video at 50,000 miles and talked about what's going on with the bike. Not much, frankly. The thing was doing fantastic. I did another one at 60,000 miles because I had to do some maintenance at that time. That was when I dove into the engine the first time and took the valve tappet clearance measurements, which is a sign of internal engine wear and a sign of, it's an indicator of how long I can expect this bike to run. It's not the only thing, but it's a good one. So is engine compression. And so while I'm prepping the bike, at 75,000 miles I'm due for another valve tappet clearance check, but that'll happen while I'm on the trip. So I jumped in about 4,000 miles early and I'm doing it here now at 71,000 miles. So let me tell you what I found. So as those who watch my channel know, I use an inexpensive Shell Rotella motor oil exclusively in this motorcycle that is intended for diesel engines. And I've wanted to make this bike an experiment and just see if I just use that oil the entire time and never deviate from it, what kind of life do I get out of my engine? Last time I did this review at 50,000 miles, the engine was in fantastic condition, and at 60,000 miles, and the valve tappets still were yet to be adjusted in any significant way, and the compression was great. So that's kind of where I'm going again here while I change spark plugs and air filter. And so let's talk about things that I haven't had to do, that is, have not had to do in 71,000 miles of ownership with this bike. I still have yet to replace the clutch or the clutch plates. Nothing there, it just keeps working. I haven't replaced a single bulb. Fuel pump still works great. The only thing I've done with this bike in 71,000 miles is change things that you would expect would get consumed, like oil, tires, air filters, brake pads. That's it. On the rear brake, I did replace the brake rotor, or the disc, and then of course the pads a couple of times. Front brakes, I've replaced the front pads. The originals came off, and then another set of aftermarket have also come off, and I'm on now a third set, which are again aftermarket. That's it. I've already covered how I put a fuel commander in this bike to address that kind of straight from the factory lean condition that all of these bikes, well, all is a strong word, many of these older first generation V-Stroms suffered from a hesitation and sometimes even a backfire at a lower RPM range. And the Power Commander completely fixed that. And so for tens of thousands of miles, I have not had to deal with that at all. This is so much easier for me when I'm not talking and I'm actually thinking about what I'm doing. And let me guess, I don't even know how much gas is in here, but it seems every time I do this, I've chosen to do it when it's full. Murphy's Law. Yeah, it's feeling quite heavy. Oh boy. Just finished draining the coolant, and if you're watching this and wondering, well, how do I check valve tappet clearance on my V-Strom? You know, what is this process for disassembling the bike? Good news, I have a video on that already made, and so I'll post a link to that right here, and I'll throw it in the description below also. Okay, so I got the valve covers open and I can get at the tappet clearance, and I've checked those clearances. And what have I come up with? I have come up with, first, that what we need is on intakes, we need between 0.1 and 0.2 millimeters. On all of my intakes, I'm at 0.15, 0.17, 0.15, 0.15. So all four intakes are smack dab in the center of that range, meaning nowhere there that's appreciable, perhaps a little. If I look back, yeah, I had one that was a 0.1, well no, it was 0.17 last time. Essentially, looking back 30,000 miles ago, I had the exact same intake readings. So the intake valve clearances aren't changing. There isn't wear there whatsoever. On the exhaust side, on the front cylinder, I have one measuring 0.2. Oh, by the way, the exhaust clearance should be between 0.2 and 0.3 millimeters. Well, I've got 0.2, 0.22, 0.23, and 0.23. So one of those is at the absolute minimum that's allowable. And when I look back at that shim, I changed it back at 30,000 miles. I changed that from a 2.85 millimeter shim to a 2.8 millimeter shim. So I took 0.05 of a millimeter off and opened that gap up again to where it was smack dab in the range. That's what I need to do again. But of course now I've got a 2.8 shim in there, so to get that 0.05 of a millimeter, I need to replace it with a 2.75, which I have 5 of them right here. Saw this coming eventually, but frankly I bought these years ago thinking I would need them so much sooner than this, and I haven't until now. So no problem, I'll have this thing back in spec, and we'll go another, God, I don't know how many miles, a lot. This engine just is really holding up well. The number of available shims, these increments that go down and down and down and thus allow me to continue opening that valve gap, they go quite a ways from 2.75. It's taken me 71,000 miles just to get to this point, and I think there's another, I'm guessing here, 8 shims to go. So how many hundreds of thousands of miles is that going to be before I get there? Valve wear is very minimal and quite good. That's what this is all telling me. And all my stuff is falling out. Okay, so the next thing we can test to judge the health of my engine here is a compression test. So I've got the compression gauge down into the rear cylinder spark plug hole, and let's turn this over and see what kind of compression I'm getting. Wow, 70,000 miles and I'm up at like 165 psi in the rear. That's pretty dang good. And now the front cylinder. Little bit less, 160, maybe 2 or 3, but still just great, you know? Okay, so I'm done doing mechanical checks at this point because mechanically there isn't anything to do with this V-Strom. It just keeps going reliably, thousands and thousands of miles, and I'm about to embark on a 10,000 mile trip into some of the hottest weather of the year. You know, you don't want to be on a machine that you don't trust and you don't think is reliable. I have 71,000 miles on this bike and I have full trust in the reliability of this bike. The engine compression is good. The valve tappet clearances are finally starting to show the tiniest bit of wear. I believe that the available shims go down to 2.3 millimeter in 5/100ths of a millimeter increments in between. So I've got, I mean, by that measure alone, I've got hundreds of thousands of miles yet to go. Of course, the valve train is not the only part of the engine. Maybe something else will wear before then, but it's just fantastic. The inexpensive Shell Rotella T4 15W40 oil that I've been using exclusively in this bike is treating it well. I do change it frequently. I change it more frequently than is recommended by the manufacturer of the bike. So, but not too much before, just a few hundred miles sooner than what they recommend. What else? I'm gonna go on this ride. I've not changed wheel bearings. I have not, I mean, I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, guys. I haven't done anything to this bike except change the oil and enjoy it and put tires on it and brake pads. So there you go. 70,000 mile, 70 plus thousand mile review of the first gen Suzuki V-Strom. Would I buy a high mileage first gen Suzuki V-Strom, you know, if it was for sale, if it had 40,000, even 50,000 miles on it? Of course, price matters here, but yeah, I wouldn't worry about it working and being reliable for me. You know, so there you go. Hey, if you like motorcycling, check out my book, Creating Mr. Corton. It's available on urbanmonktv.com or on Amazon. And please click that like button. It helps support the channel. And subscribe if you want to become an urban monk. Thanks for watching.